Tom Cruise has never been one to overshare. Throughout a career spanning over 4 decades, the Hollywood titan has masterfully kept his personal life largely shielded from the blinding lights of celebrity gossip. But in a rare and surprising twist, Cruise recently broke his silence on something that has sparked a wave of speculation, admiration, and renewed interest in his off-screen world, his relationship with Ana de Armas, and more specifically, her latest cinematic outing. For a man whose public appearances are often tightly orchestrated and whose statements are typically reserved for studio-driven promotional campaigns, Cruise's candid remarks have stunned fans and industry insiders alike. They were unexpected, heartfelt, and deeply revealing, not just about his opinion of de Armas's film, but about the dynamic that exists between two of the most captivating figures in modern cinema. Whispers of a romance between Cruise and de Armas had been circulating for months, if not longer. Though the pair have not confirmed the details of their relationship in traditional press interviews or flashy Instagram posts, their mutual admiration and visible chemistry have become increasingly difficult to deny. They've been seen attending exclusive events together, sharing quiet moments on private sets, and even spotted enjoying time away from the cameras in remote corners of Europe. But neither had spoken publicly about the other until now. When Cruise was approached during a recent international press tour for his upcoming film, a journalist casually asked what he thought of de Armas's new movie. What followed was a moment that caught everyone off guard. Cruise, usually composed and calculated, paused for a moment, smiled, and then spoke with a level of sincerity that revealed just how invested he had become, not just in de Armas as a fellow actor, but as a person whose work he clearly respects. "I saw the film twice," he began, his voice measured but unmistakably warm. "Once on my own and once with a couple of close friends, and I have to say, it's absolutely brilliant. Ana delivers a performance that's raw, layered, and unforgettable. It's the kind of work that reminds you why you fall in love with cinema in the first place." The film in question, a high-stakes psychological thriller set in post-war Europe, marks a bold turn for de Armas. Known for her previous roles in Knives Out, Blonde, and No Time to Die, de Armas has never shied away from complex characters. But this latest role demanded a level of emotional vulnerability and psychological tension that even her most ardent fans hadn't seen before. Playing a former resistance fighter haunted by her past, de Armas reportedly underwent months of physical and emotional training to embody the character. The result has been a flurry of critical acclaim and Oscar buzz. For Cruise, however, the accolades seem almost secondary to the personal pride he feels in watching someone he clearly cares for succeed at such a high level. "She poured herself into that role," Cruise continued, clearly moved. "You can see it in every frame, the pain, the strength, the contradictions. It's all there. That's not something you can fake. That comes from a place of truth. And Ana, she's got that truth inside her. She's not afraid to bring it out." Industry insiders quickly took note of Cruise's remarks, particularly the unusually emotive way he expressed them. While Cruise has worked with some of the biggest names in the business, Nicole Kidman, Emily Blunt, Rebecca Ferguson, his statements about de Armas carried a tone that was distinctively more personal, more reflective, even protective. For a man who has often been described as a perfectionist with a relentless drive for excellence, to publicly voice such deep admiration was both surprising and telling. The nature of their relationship has remained something of a mystery. While there has never been an official confirmation in the tabloids or a joint red carpet appearance that would serve as the public's stamp of approval, their growing closeness has been an open secret in Hollywood circles. According to sources close to both stars, Cruise and de Armas first connected during a dinner party hosted by a mutual friend in London in early 2024. At the time, Cruise had been filming a major action sequel while de Armas was wrapping up production on her film. What began as a casual conversation about script development quickly turned into hours of deep discussion on acting philosophies, storytelling, and the emotional sacrifices that come with fame. Both actors are known for their intense preparation and devotion to their craft, and it was this shared discipline that first laid the groundwork for their bond. "They speak the same language," said a producer who has worked with both stars. "They understand what it takes to commit to a role, to live it 24/7, to carry the weight of a story on your shoulders. That's rare to find, even in this business." Since then, the two have reportedly spent increasing amounts of time together, both personally and professionally. Though they've managed to avoid paparazzi traps for the most part, fans have noticed subtle signs. The matching watches they were seen wearing in separate photos, the mutual mentions in interviews without naming names, the shared vacations, to ultra-private locations in the Maldives and Lake Como. Still, Cruz's latest comments mark the first time he has publicly acknowledged de Armas in such glowing terms. Perhaps even more intriguing than Cruz's words was the way de Armas responded. When asked during her own press junket if she had heard what Cruz said, she laughed softly and blushed, then responded with a simple but telling phrase, "It means the world coming from him." That phrase, so understated and yet so revealing, set off a new wave of headlines. In a world of celebrity couples who often overshare or manufacture drama for the sake of relevance, the Cruz-de Armas dynamic has unfolded with an air of elegance and discretion. Tom Cruise's influence in Hollywood cannot be overstated. He is one of the last remaining movie stars whose name alone can guarantee box office returns. His involvement in any narrative, romantic or otherwise, immediately shifts the spotlight. But his apparent role in de Armas's life, and her acknowledgement of it, suggests a relationship grounded in mutual respect rather than publicity. Friends close to Cruz have remarked that Ana has brought a different kind of energy into his life. Known for his intensity and sometimes isolating dedication to film, Cruz has been described in recent months as more relaxed, more open, and perhaps most shockingly, more grounded. One longtime collaborator said, "Tom's always been a force of nature, but with Ana there's this softness. It's like she balances him out." On set, Cruz has reportedly become more collaborative, willing to take breaks, something he's famously known to resist, and even more attuned to the creative process of others. While no one credits de Armas solely for this shift, there's a consensus that her presence has had a calming, perhaps even healing effect on him. For her part, de Armas has never relied on anyone else's star power to carve her path. Boldest. In Cuba and trained in Spain, she made her mark through talent, grit, and an uncanny ability to adapt to any role. From romantic dramas to action-packed blockbusters, her versatility has positioned her as one of the most exciting actresses of her generation. But Cruz's endorsement may open even more doors, both in Hollywood and beyond. Already, the buzz around her latest film has intensified since Cruz's comments. Studios are reportedly rushing to secure de Armas for upcoming roles and awards. Seasoned strategists are revising their predictions to include her as a likely nominee in several major categories. In the cutthroat world of cinema, having Tom Cruise as your most vocal fan is no small advantage. Despite the growing speculation and attention, both Cruise and de Armas have maintained a dignified silence about the finer details of their relationship. But there's a poetic symmetry in the way their careers and lives seem to be aligning. He, the veteran actor still breaking box office records. She, the rising star redefining what it means to be a leading woman in a new cinematic era. Together, they form an unlikely but compelling duo, two people at very different points in their lives, finding common ground through a shared passion for storytelling. Some wonder if this is merely a passing chapter in both their lives, a moment of mutual admiration that will eventually give way to new relationships, new films, and the perpetual churn of Hollywood. But others see something deeper, something more enduring. As one close friend of de Armas put it, "They challenge each other, but they also protect each other." That's rare, and that's what makes it special. Cruz's public support for de Armas' film may seem like a simple compliment, but in the context of his carefully guarded life, it speaks volumes. It signals trust, vulnerability, and a willingness to let the world in, even if only a little. And in doing so, it gives us a glimpse of a man still evolving, still discovering, and still capable of being moved by the power of performance and connection. In an industry often defined by ego and illusion, Tom Cruise's brief but sincere statement has cut through the noise. It reminded everyone that behind the spectacle, behind the stunts and special effects, there are still artists who believe in each other, who root for each other, and who find something real in the very unreal world of Hollywood. And perhaps that, more than anything, is the story worth paying attention to. Whether their relationship remains under the radar or eventually steps into the public spotlight, one thing is certain. Ana de Armas' new film has become more than just a career milestone. it has become a symbol of artistic courage, personal growth, and emotional resonance. And in Tom Cruise's words, we've heard not just praise for a performance, but a quiet revelation of admiration, perhaps even love, from a man who has spent most of his life hiding such feelings from the world. In that sense, his silence breaking may be the most profound performance of all. For a man like Tom Cruise, whose name has long been synonymous with calculated charisma, steely-eyed confidence, and a near impenetrable veneer, any hint of vulnerability carries a kind of seismic weight. His image has always been tightly controlled, polished by decades in the limelight, and carefully preserved behind a screen of stunts, professionalism, and purposefully elusive personal boundaries. So when he chooses to speak openly, and even softly, about someone else's artistry, it is more than a compliment. It is an event. And when that someone is Ana de Armas, a woman whose own rise in Hollywood has been equally marked by both critical acclaim and public scrutiny, the gesture becomes charged with meaning. Ana's film, celebrated not only for its narrative boldness, but also for the subtlety and emotional range of her performance, has ignited conversations across the industry. But perhaps no commentary has been as telling as Cruise's. There was no red carpet declaration, no grandstanding interview, but rather an understated acknowledgement, words that felt hand-picked, sincere, and curiously tender. Coming from a man whose public persona is often larger than life, it was the quietness of the statement that made it ring the loudest. It is not the first time Tom has shown support for fellow actors, but this felt different. It was less about the performance as an isolated piece of art, and more about what that performance revealed. He didn't just talk about her acting, he spoke about her soul, her depth, her willingness to push beyond comfort and expectation. He alluded to the emotional risks she took on screen, the rawness she allowed herself to expose, and in doing so offered a window into something much more private, his appreciation for that vulnerability, both as an artist and as a man. In many ways, Cruise has always lived a double life, one that satisfies the public's hunger for adrenaline-fueled escapism, and another, quieter existence filled with private challenges, personal reflection, and deep emotional scars that rarely surface. His silence on matters of the heart has often been read as aloofness, or worse, detachment. But those who know how to read between the lines, who understand the language of restraint and the power of carefully measured words, could sense that something more meaningful was being conveyed this time. Ana de Armas, with her ethereal beauty and magnetic presence, has a way of disarming even the most stoic personalities. But beyond her appearance lies a fierce intellect and a haunting emotional transparency that few can emulate. Her performance in this latest film, which many critics have described as transformative and career-defining, is not just an artistic triumph. It's a personal one. It speaks to years of hard work, of learning the industry's brutal rhythms, of overcoming stereotyping, of growing into her voice. And it is this journey that Cruise seems to have recognized with such reverence. When Tom Cruise speaks about the bravery it takes to bare one's soul on screen, he is not merely talking about acting. He is reflecting, perhaps subconsciously, on his own resistance to that same kind of vulnerability. For decades, he has built a brand out of invincibility. On screen, he runs faster, jumps higher, and flies farther than any of his contemporaries. But it is not lost on anyone that the real leap, the one into emotional openness, has always been the most elusive. That is why his reaction to Ana's film feels like a subtle tectonic shift. In praising her, he seems to be acknowledging a part of himself that he rarely allows the public to see, a man capable of deep feeling, of admiration, of emotional intimacy. Perhaps it is the safety of her presence, her understanding, or simply the inspiration she ignites in him that has made this possible. Whatever the reason, his response feels like a departure from the polished PR tone we've grown accustomed to. It feels human. There is a poetry to this moment. Two people from vastly different backgrounds, connected not just by fame or professional admiration, but by a shared respect for the craft and for each other. In her performance, Ana reached into herself and pulled out something pure and unguarded. In his response, Tom let down a wall that has stood for decades. These actions, both separate and deeply intertwined, form a dialogue more intimate than any interview or public appearance could convey. The entertainment world often thrives on spectacle, on exaggerated gestures and orchestrated personas. But in this instance, what has captivated audiences is not the loudness of their connection, but its quiet honesty. The rare emotional transparency that surfaced in Tom's words speaks volumes. It's a reminder that behind the fame, the press, circuits, and the image management, there exists a man who is still capable of wonder, of admiration, of being moved. For Ana, this moment is equally significant. To have her work acknowledged in such an intimate, heartfelt manner by someone she is personally close to, someone whose own career is etched into cinematic history, validates not only her talent, but also her courage, her willingness to be vulnerable, to defy expectations, and to tell a story that resonates on such a deep level has not just earned her accolades, it has touched the heart of a man known for guarding his own. Their relationship, still shrouded in mystery, seems to exist in a space that defies easy definition. But whether it ever receives the public confirmation so many crave, the emotional truth has already been spoken. It came wrapped in the words Tom used to describe her performance, words that could only come from someone who sees not just the character on screen, but the person behind the eyes, the soul behind the script. And so while cameras may continue to chase them, while headlines speculate and commentators theorize, the most authentic moment has already occurred, in the space between her final scene and his quiet praise. It was in that delicate pause, that emotional undercurrent, that the true story unfolded. A story not of fame or gossip, but of connection, of two artists meeting at the edge of their craft and perhaps at the beginning of something even deeper. In a world that often mistakes noise for meaning, Tom Cruise's decision to speak softly and from the heart resonates all the more. It is a reminder that sometimes the most profound declarations are those whispered between the lines. And perhaps, just perhaps, his decision to speak was not only a gesture of admiration for Ana's work, but a subtle invitation to the world to see a different side of him, one that is more vulnerable, more reflective, and ultimately more real.